Good. Does this work? It works. So, welcome everyone to the second session of the morning of the second day of the workshop of the 8th Inspire conference. My name is Atina Trakas. I work for the OGC, and although I'm blonde, I'm not Nordic. I'm half Greek. But still, I would like to share with you, and together with my colleagues, share with you a Nordic perspective on why organizations get engaged in international standards development. Think local, act global, can be also, yeah, you can put it that way. And that's, yeah, so that's the agenda for today. Well, first of all, we have my colleague Bart de Latauer will join shortly. Then we have Michael Carrasio from Carmenta, who will present on a project, the Mona Lisa project. We have Olaf Ostensen with a double hat today as chair of TC211 and representing the Norwegian National Mapping Agency. Jari Raini from Finland will talk about the OGC Nordic Forum and also about a Finnish perspective, and myself. So I start with a few words about the OGC. No, sorry, it's Olaf Ostensen. He will present on international standards development. So the idea is that Olaf and I will talk about ISO TC211, and I will talk about the OGC, what we are doing as standards development organization. Then Jari will present on the OGC Nordic Forum. The OGC Nordic Forum is a members-driven forum to provide input from the international standard setting towards Nordic countries, and also provide feedback from those countries back to the international standards bodies. And then a second part of this workshop, it's actually presentations, we will share with you experiences and provide some examples, and then we have depending on the time, we will talk about how you can participate and where you can find input and whatever. I think we have enough time for questions, so whenever you have a questions, just raise your hands, and yeah, we will try to answer them. So I would like to hand the equipment over to Olaf. And can you take that? And I put up your presentation.
Yeah, thanks. Still works.
It's a bit bizarre because this is here, and whenever I want to see what's on there, I have to turn around. I cannot. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Athena, and good morning, everybody. Yes, I will say a few words about the ISO TC211, and well, it's called Nordic Way. It's really just a glimpse of that, and also just a glimpse of what we are doing in ISO TC211, but more maybe on the application of those standards. I would just start with my own way into this. I started doing standards in geospatial standards in 1982 in Norway. At that time there were no real international activity, and we introduced our first real version in 86, which was mainly exchange format together with also a data definition language. So started 82, but then there was an international activity here in Europe by CEN TC287, which started in, well, it was formed in 91, but practically started in 92. And Norway, we were very heavily engaged in that. I led the working group 1 on framework of standards in that early phase of CEN TC287, led by François Sarget, whom many of you will know from France. And then, only 2 years after, there was a big year for standardization. Then we had actually 2 organizations starting, ISO TC211 and OGC at that time. So now we celebrate our 20th anniversary. And Norway, we had good experience with our own national activities and also with the European one, and we said we wanted to volunteer to also take a lead in the international activities. So that as a very important step forward for our domestic situation also. So it ended up in participating in all these organizations, CEN, as I said, ISO, a little bit later actually active in OGC, but also I mentioned the International Hydrographic Organization, which is doing standards in the maritime field. Now there will be a small ISO basis bias, and then I will come back to more of the collaboration between these organizations. So ISO is placed in Geneva. It's of course dealing with any kind of international standards, from screw threads to railway application to services whatsoever. The committee I'm leading is responsible for geographic information and geomatics, and you see it's grown to be a fairly huge organization in terms of voluntary activities. All these people here are not paid by an organization, they are paid by their home organization or umbrella organization or standards body at home, but not by ISO TC211, which has no budget. So we have now 6 acting working groups. I will not go into all these data here, and we have a lot of supporting activities. The one I will come back to is this joint advisory group between OGC and ISO TC211. So that's an instrument to coordinate the work program of the 2 organizations. And as many of you will know, there is a two-way communication in the sense that several standards have gone from OGC into the ISO process to become international standards, and some of the international standards also gone into to OGC to become their abstract topic specification for that field. So there is a very good two-way communication, and there are regular meetings now between the 2 organizations in order to coordinate the program. One new very good example, which will become operational, which is operational now, but will be launched a little bit later in the year, is joint activity between CEN, OGC and ISO on have a standards tracker. That is an open for anyone tool to come up with your comments, your requests for new activities, your comments on errors, and or whatever comments on the different standards. So you go into an organization. This is the ISO part of that, and you pick, for instance, a standard that you want to make a comment to, and then you can do this, and it will be followed up by our program maintenance group, for instance, in our case. This has been developed by OGC and it's hosted by OGC, but there will be one for CEN, one for ISO, and one for OGC. A very nice example of good collaboration between the organizations. A little bit now on how standards matters, and the reason why we are here is of course Inspire, and I'm sure all of you know a lot about Inspire, and more than I do also, although I've been active in Inspire development since 2001, 2002 in different groups. If you look at the directive now and the implementing rules, which are the legal regulations, then you will see that they have mentioning of standards. the directive, I'll come to in more details. The directive, just briefly, implementing rules, some, but of course the technical guidance documents a lot of the different standards. So, a simplified version of the INSPIRE architecture, we can see to show where standards are really related. A lot of standards are here at the content level, of course, both on geospatial information in general, the harmonized especially. You see ISO standards, you will see OGC standards, and also on the services side and on the metadata, of course. If you go to the directive itself, it does not name any explicit, concrete international standard, but it mentions the importance of international standards in the preamble 16 and 28, and in the articles 5, 7, and 20. If you're moving on to the implementing rules, you will see more concrete mentioning of standards. And here I have used the ISO designation, although some of these are joint project with OGC. So you have here for the metadata regulation for the data interoperability, and I have not updated this with the latest Annex 2 and 3 implementing rules, so there might be some additional now which is not in this slide. And for the network services, and this is in the implementing rules itself, so they are legal obligations for any nation in the European Union and in some of the EFTA countries. But of course, the long range is normative references in the technical guidance document, and this might not also be complete. And this is hopefully the only list you will see of the ISO standards. And again, many of these are joint projects like GML, yeah, well, are they? Where are they? WFS, filter encoding, observation and measurement. So you see, INSPIRE really relies upon the existence of international standards developed by the standardization bodies. And without those, it would have been much harder work to make INSPIRE a reality. And this shows how a regional perspective is now reliant upon the global perspective. The Earth is mostly covered by water, as you know, and also we have an example with the International Hydrographic Organization. They are also building upon, like INSPIRE, the same set of international standards. And I emphasize again, some of these are joint work between several organizations. And then they put on their additional themes or additional aspects on top of that. This is important. There is now a global coverage of the electronic nautical charts developed by IHO. The defense community also, DIGIWIG, not exactly a NATO body, but still very closely related to NATO, is also reliant upon, there are non-NATO countries in operating or collaborating in DIGIWIG, also relies upon these international standards. We have other things from the UN classification systems coming out of FAO in Rome, the land administration domain from FIG, very advanced template for cadastre and land registries, 3D template. We are into climate change, standardization for essential climate variables, a process which is very slow, and I'm not sure it will amount to something, but it's still recognized that international standards are important. One of the later activities is to join forces with Universal Postal Union and get international standards for addressing the several aspects, not only postal addresses, but also geographical addresses and all the aspects that where location and address is important, a huge field of activities. Going from regional activities like in Europe, like in Asia Pacific, like in Africa and Latin America, there's formed newly a few years ago the United Nations Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, and they have taken up the importance of standards very clearly in their mandate. And we, as standardization bodies, especially OGC, ISO, and IHO again, we took the challenge of looking into the issue list that UNGGIM has created 9 issues that they want to focus on in the work. And what we did is to project the existing standards to these issues, and you here see the situation that we have. And so we are fairly well on this data sharing, accessibility and dissemination of data with a lot of different standards already. We are lower on some of these other aspects, and some of them are totally missing, but that's maybe it's not the really technical perspective, the partnership with civil sector and industry. But we are fairly well into solving or contributing to the global aspects by what we have already. But the UN has also asked us to simplify this and come up with a standards guide, especially for the developing countries. That's under drafting now and will be delivered to the UN and this committee in at the end of this month. There will be a guide here and a companion document listing more concretely the standards that we think are essential for especially for the developing countries. We are developing this document according to 4 tiers, where we start with sort of the basic data content and sharing of maps over the web, then going into more geospatial information and sharing partnerships. Here we have the SDIs, national SDIs, especially enabling the nation, going further with and looking somewhat into what the future will bring also. So, and we are projecting now standards into these categories in as a guidance document. This might, from our perspective, from the ISO perspective, be a core set of standards that a new nation should start to use for the different purposes and building their geospatial information management. You see some of the very basic that we are dealing with on a daily basis, and also which are very important for Inspire. If you want to know more about ISO TC211, you can go to our website. So that finalizes this part of my presentations.
How many ways to put this up? Thank you very much, Olaf. I could take the same presentation and exchange or put in the OGC logo, but Olaf did a fantastic job. So actually, thank you, because you saved a lot of our time, saved a lot of time for discussion. That's really good, especially the UNGGIM, the joint efforts, the standards tracker, that is super. And if we have time, we might look into that in more detail. So I will say a few words about the OGC. If I can change to the next slide, that is. So we have a OGC, as Olaf said already. We are also a standards development organization. We are a voluntary organization, and we have members from all over the world. So if we have a nice movie on YouTube. I don't put it up on stage right now because you can watch it if you're at your desks. So what we are doing is we geo-enable the web. So if you talk about HTTP is the dial tone for the World Wide Web, and OGC standards are the encodings for the geospatial web. And as Olaf said, many OGC standards are also ISO standards. So it's OGC/ISO. So I give you a very short introduction to the OGC. We are funded in 1994, so 20th anniversary. It seems to be the year of the big celebrations of many standards bodies. We are a not-for-profit organization and a consensus-based and voluntary. So in our members from OGC, in OGC they come from public administration, from the ministerial or the national level down to the local level. We have members from industry that are from the big players to small and medium-sized enterprises, and we have the academic and research sector. And all these members, they work together to develop standards, and I think that's because that's quite healthy and sustainable, because we have on the one side we have public administration or the user side, organizations with requirements. We have the technical aspects from software developers or integrators, and of course the research community and the academic sector, and that's this triumvirate of group members. I think that's a very good way to develop standards. Currently we have over 480 members, and the reason why they join is they have interoperability issues. So just most of our member organizations come from Europe, 202, followed by North America, Asia Pacific and the Middle East. And here I listed our members from the Nordic countries. So that's first is from Denmark, then from Finland, Norway and Sweden. But you can find the list of all members on our website as well. We have over 35 adopted OGC standards. They were adopted by our members, and so I focus on the members because the process in OGC works through the members. Of course, you have OGC staff. That's me. I'm the services director for Europe. I have a colleague who is in the room as well. That's Bart de Latauer. He's with the interoperability program. But the work is being done by the members. So you can always talk to OGC members if you want to learn more about what they are doing as well. An important aspect of a standards, of OGC standards, is they can be implemented into software. Otherwise, who would use them? And you find on our website a list of registered products. You can see which software is implementing which standard, or which standard has implemented by how many different software products, and you can find this on the website. And if you're implementing an OGC standard and your software is not on the list, you can add this as well. Means we don't know how many implementations of OGC standards are out there. We have a broad user community, and Olaf mentioned that already. Many OGC and ISO standards are used in the Inspire directive, and I don't have this up right now, but if we have time later, again, OGC, ISO and CEN TC287, we worked 2 years ago on a market report, Open Standards in Inspire. This gives a nice overview which standards are used in the in the Inspire environment. So this gives a description what is meant with a download service, what is meant with a view service, and gives a description about this standard very briefly. The document has an additional nice executive summary, and gives you also some guidance how you can contribute, or if you have difficulties with a standard, how you can report your experiences back to the processes of OGC and ISO. And as in ISO, OGC has also a lot of alliance partners, because we do not want to reinvent the wheel, and we want to also offer others our experiences. So we work together with other standards bodies like W3C, IEEE, but also with organizations like OSG, or the Open Source Geospatial Foundation. This is just to give you a little bit an idea where the OGC fits into the standards world. So you have more domain-specific and more infrastructure-specific standards, and we have de jure or de facto standards. So ISO is definitely on the de jure side, and OGC is somewhere in between. So we instantiate domain and de jure into infrastructure. So these are a few words from my side about the OGC. Of course, there's much more to tell. We have working groups on domains. We have a very active hydrology domain working group. We have a 3D information model working group. And we have the standards working groups. This is where the standards are developed. But that's not the focus today. So I would like to hand the microphone over to Jari. And I will set up here, who will talk about the OGC Nordic Forum.
My head really doesn't like those. Can you hear me?
No, you have to use the mic. They are recording.
They are recording, even worse.
I help. So, is this good?
Good.
Here.
Should be in the folder. Think local. That's one. I have both presentations in the same. Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Jari Reini and I work for National Land Survey of Finland. This is really a warm-up presentation. I only have 4 slides, then I have more in about Finnish perspective in standardization. But as said, we have a forum called OGC Nordic Forum. It's really about outreach and giving information to people outside in Nordic region. We have members from Finland, Sweden, Norway and Denmark. I think we currently have 12 or 13 participating organizations. In last 1 year we haven't really been very active, but trying to get up again. Together with help from Martina and Bart, thinking about new activities. So what we are doing there, developing some best practices, giving some documentation, use cases, so more about sharing information to GI community. Also we have OGC Nordic Forum website, it's a wiki page, some information out there. Then we have had interoperability days. The last one was in Stockholm 2012. I have a screenshot in next slide about the agenda regarding that. Of course we would like to get more members also in OGC. Well, on the other hand, we had something like 480 member bodies already in OGC. I don't know is there a big need for growth anymore, but I think we have a couple of companies in Nordic region who might be interested in joining as well. If we go to OGC Nordic Forum website, there is a URL, you can go there, and there is information about the previous interoperability day in Stockholm. We had really a full house, more than 100 participants. It really was a successful event. Most likely the next event will be in maybe in Norway or Finland or Denmark, so one country by one country. So next time maybe not in Sweden. We had presentations from National Land Survey, from Finnish Geodetic Institute, Saab Systems, Carmenta, etc. And I think it was really worth of having that session, and hopefully we will have a new new interoperability day, maybe early next year. The problem is really to how to organize. We have so many seminars and conferences all the time, so should somehow combine with some, maybe with some bigger event to have it as a side event, this Nordic Forum Interoperability Day. If you are interested in joining, just let us know. Michael is vice chair of OGC Nordic Forum, and I'm acting as a chair from National Land Survey. So that was all for Nordic Forum. I think it's time to, is it Mikael, the next presentation, and then it's again my time to play with this microphone.
Thank you.
Let's try this on. Super. And the switch. Yeah, I put it there. Okay. Well, I will try to share some experience with you from working with the maritime project called Mona Lisa 2. And I am Mika Gråsjö. I am Vice President on Camanta for SDI Solutions, and I work practically with the product management for our service solutions. So I'm responsible for adding OGC standards to our products, and we are quite focused on adding compliant standards into our products. Just some very brief information about Carmenta. We're focusing on what we call mission critical GIS. So we develop software components which is embedded in other applications, and often it is in defense applications, emergency systems, and so on. So it's really often a matter of handling a lot of geospatial information in a stable and robust environment. So what is then Mona Lisa project? Is anyone here heard about this project? Okay, that's interesting. But this is focused specifically on naval things, and it's aimed for developing new efficient methods for safe and environmentally friendly maritime transport in the European Union, and we're actively participating in this project. Some facts and figures. It's part of a larger European Union program, but it's quite a big overall budget for this activity. We contribute with 50% ourselves as a contributing company. There's quite a lot of different organizations participating in this activity. It started off, it actually has been a Mona Lisa 1 project also, so this is a pre-sequel for that. And so this is some of the actors involved in this. And I said, the previous slide showed they are divided in 4 different activities, and we are participating in activity 1. And there are a mixture of different organizations here, private companies, academia, and large system developers, system integrators such as Transas and Jeppesen, which builds a lot of naval software and delivers a lot of solutions to that in that sea traffic management, STM, is actually a term more or less defined by the Swedish Maritime Administration, which leads and has initialized this project. It's a concept of sharing and using all data from the maritime space in real time. And the main thing is, of course, to improve safety and make more environmental friendly transport by ship, and improve the efficiency as well to save money. It's actually that the world trade, about 90% of all trade is performed on ship. So the ship transport is very, very important for the global distribution of goods and the trade. And the sea traffic management takes control over just one part of a sort of multimodal transport chain. And here's some connection to the INSPIRE regulations, because we are really waiting for the INSPIRE transport networks data models to add standards for making possible these multimodal transport chains and taking care of issues between in borders and so on. So that's very important for standardization as well. What's the aim for the project then? Today we keep quite good track on where ships are. There are a global system of positioning ships. The IAS system is running today, so we know where all the ships are. So that's the surface-based operations. But what Mona Lisa aims to is to develop a more voyage-based management of ship transports, and that's to find methods and develop systems for exchanging routes. So everyone should know where everyone else is going, and by doing that you can avoid accidents and you can make better planning. So this is actually what the Mona Lisa project is aiming for, just to instead of just monitoring the naval situation or the maritime situation, it's actually to know where every ship is going. And to do that you must use standards. So there are standard committees working on route exchange formats and so on. Within HIO there are a lot of work going on for this, and it was mentioned earlier here. That's standards body, and the contribution it has to this effort. Well then, short about our role and what we try to achieve in this project. We are involved in some sub-activities, but our main focus in this project is to try to harmonize and standardize the use of geospatial information in the Mona Lisa project. I mean, it's obvious that this is a geospatial problem. There are a lot of geospatial data used. It's really a spatial problem. And what we also are involved in is trying to establish a service-oriented thinking. First the thinking in the project to build a service-oriented architecture as an efficient way of communicating within such a system. So that's another part of our involvement here, because we have been involved in other work in similar projects. So that's why we're participating in this. We also have established your portal or so your spatial hub just to demonstrate capabilities of what you can use your spatial information to in this context. So that's also a role for us in this project. And the ultimate goal is, of course, to develop new geospatial tools and methodologies in the maritime sector. And we as a private company, of course, are interested in the commercial side of this. Once this new way of thinking and a new way of managing ship transports is set up in the future. So that's why we're involved in this, of course. So what we have done so far, we are sort of in the middle of the project now. We have tried to work with a workflow model. This is more or less standard system design, more or less, just to establish a service-oriented solution. First, find all functions needed in the systems, try to isolate them as much as possible to specific functions, then make an investigation of all available, all kinds of geospatial information, all kinds of geospatial data which is available in this domain by the other participants. And it's not only naval charts, of course, or sea charts. It's bathymetric information, it's metrology, and a lot of other very much so geospatial information. And then we try to specify services to provide these functions within the service-oriented framework, and try to provide geospatial data as a service, and break down. This is very important, to break down this to as small pieces as possible, just to isolate functions and geospatial services. If you do that, it is much easier to combine them in the next level, to add services to make combined systems using different services. And then, of course, next step is to find the suitable geospatial standard for the geospatial data, and other standards, of course, for other kind of information in the system. But we are focusing on the geospatial part, so that's where our expertise is. And then we come to the OGC, which is a natural choice, of course, for implementing these services. So we more or less use every available OGC standard for adding to this effort, and building actually a system for which has implemented a lot of already. And in the end, ensure that all functionality is covered by all these specifications. This is a very brief workflow description. But anyway, that's the methodology behind it. And just to give an example, there are a lot more service types than this. But this is a mixture of route information, bathymetric information, different kinds of meteorological data. And we identify the service providers who should really set up this to connect to the service as close to the one responsible for measuring and collecting all the data. And so we identify every service provider in this, and then we choose which standard is most efficient to use. And you recognize, of course, a lot of standards here. I suppose you're very familiar with these standards, so I don't go into more detail on this, but these are the most commonly used in the project. so far. The WMS for just the view services. WCS and WFS both used as both download services and online data source services for actually doing route optimization. So we have a specific node in the service-oriented architecture which does all the optimization. And the optimization service asks for depth data and meteorological data through a WCS service, get all the data to the optimization module, do the optimization, and send the route back as a VFS or a GML structure through a VFS service. So it's actually a working chain here using all these standards. Here are an example of an application which is the Swedish new search and rescue system, which Carmenta is actually building and delivering to the Swedish Maritime Administration, an ongoing project. Here we have actually connected this application with the service, different services, and we can reuse data collected in the Mona Lisa project and use it as background layers in the search and rescue application. And then we have established this first version of a Mona Lisa Geospatial portal. And why we have done this is to, in the project, to promote the use of geospatial information. I mean, the other participants have actually no clue, I would say, but that's incorrect. They have very little understanding of what can be done actually with the proper handling of geospatial information. So that's a major thing for us to promote. And we also try to gather all geospatial services in one place, so this could be work as a hub. And of course also information, the standard geoportal information, the metadata and so on is also available in this. And we try to support all sub-activities in the project with geodata for their specific services they contribute in the project. And by doing this, we try to establish a common way of working with geospatial information in the entire project. And yeah, standards is key here, of course, to give standardized access to geospatial data. And the last bullet here, this is very important also, to as quickly as possible get something running so you can see the actual result. You can see nice looking maps. So once this was established and we could show the other participant in the Mona Lisa project how nice it looks and how fast it runs, and you can combine different services, you can turn on and off layers just as if you run it in an application. This was a real eye-opener for the project. So this is perhaps the most important thing, just to see things running. Perhaps I run out of time here, so we have had a lot of issues. Here's a long list of them, but more interesting to look at the results and to summarize this. We have focused on the portal. It's up and running. It's been very well received and had increased the knowledge about SOA and using standards a lot in the project. And it has really been an eye-opening experience, I think, for many of the participants, just to how to use geospatial information, how to use these standards, how they fit into place for creating this kind of architecture. So we have really shown the power of building web-based a web-based system. So we are actually now prototyping a full application just running on services. So it's a very thin client, browser-based. You can do more or less all what the big application can do just by adding services available from the network. And it's a good foundation for our continued work. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Are there any questions?
I have one quite technical or detailed question related to your view services. You are using webmap service.
Yeah.
And naval charts are quite challenging in visualization. Are you using SLBs?
Not yet. The short answer. I agree. So there are what the charts we are using now are more or less pre-rendered. So there. Well, yeah. Well, we can render it from S57 vector data on the fly. So, but SLD is not involved as of yet. Okay.
I have another question.
Yep.
Actually, two. First one relates to a project in which I was involved some bit more than 10 years ago. It was a consequence of the European directive on waste on board of ships. From that moment on, there was an obligation for the vessels to declare what kinds of waste they had on board when they left the port, when they entered the port. Information systems were set up to trace this waste. Also on land, it had applications because the waste recovery companies, having that information, could target what kind of vehicles they had to bring to the landing place of the ship.
So more or less a multimodal.
Kind of an integrated information system, land, sea, with an environmental implication.
Mm.
We also have other European legislation now related to the emissions on board of ships.
Mm.
So there are quite a few pieces of legislation which not only regard the position of the ship, but also, let's say, its attributes.
Yeah.
And when we were designing the industrial facilities data model for Inspire, I insisted very much that the drafting team would consider ships as an industrial facility.
Mm.
Right,
Yeah.
it's one that moves, but still it has similar characteristics overall. Now, would this be something of interest to develop further this data model for ships?
I'm sure it will, or it would be. It sounds very interesting. So we'll have a look at that. I haven't been specifically involved in that part of the project, but this is interesting because the environmental aspects are one of the big driving force behind the project, of course, and so that's interesting.
My second question relates to another initiative which was taken by Director General Mare regarding the Common Information Sharing Environment CISE project. It's about maritime security and setting up a common information space again.
Yeah.
For the, mainly I have the impression for the Coast Guards.
Okay.
Are you aware of that project, this initiative?
Not personally. Could be that other in the project have better. But this is also worth investigating, of course. Okay. There's another one.
I'm interested to hear what you're saying. So my name is Peter. I work on the survey in Great Britain, and I have difficulty getting developers of web applications to want to build that application on top of particularly web feature services. They don't seem to like interacting with them. Have you run across anything, any resistance, and what did you do to persuade them that it would actually work?
You mean the WFS service in specific? Well, there are some consideration when using that technology. But so far in this project, there hasn't been a lot of not big data volumes. So we have been able to handle it so far. But it's an issue which has to be taken into consideration. But I don't feel so much reluctance from the developers. So they are concerned about the performance and the data volumes and so on. But there are ways to handle that. Okay.
Okay, let's continue with the view from National Land Survey regarding standardization. The first thing I will talk about is why are we actually in this standardization work. Then continuing a little bit about our activities in Nordic region, how we collaborate in Nordic region, and also a few words about implementation. So we are not only doing and making documents, we are also doing some practical implementation based on these standards. So why are we in this domain? These are my personal views, maybe not always just from a National Land Survey, but of course we would like to minimize the duplicate work. Do it once and do it in a good way. Also, why we are in standardization work, we are training, giving information for software vendors as well as data providers and service providers. And in other words, we would like to have this interoperability. Personally, I also like this networking part. We have nice dinners, nice events, see a lot of people and discuss interesting topics, not always in a formal way in these sessions, but afterwards might have really nice discussions, and therefore learning a lot of new things and also sharing own information. And less waste, better results. That was the title of Standards Day in 2012. So really minimize the work. However, what we can still see in some of the standardization, these electricity systems and all these converters, that's really not well standardized yet. I think we are in good situation when it comes to geospatial world. But when you go abroad, you always have to have these plugins with you. Unbelievable, I would say right now, but that's how it works. Luckily, we are in better situation in geospatial field. Well, this is the framework we are working on. On the left-hand side, more legal information, Inspire-related information, all the implementing rules, then going to the middle, having some guidelines on metadata, discovery, view and download services. And then we are using de facto standards or OGC standards and also ISO standards. And in Finland, we are also putting those into national recommendations. So if we are thinking on the left-hand side, we have documents like 800 pages, then we are moving to 200 pages, and this on the right-hand side where we have our national recommendations, those are really 15 pages per view service, 20 pages for download service, etc. So simplifying, putting all the must information there. I don't say that there is in official standards too much information, but a little bit simplifying things. And then when we work in this standardization field and go to practical implementations, of course we first have this standardization work. We have Nordic standardization meetings. We have knowledge exchange network regarding metadata. Then OGC Nordic Forum, what I already explained. And then we are working in ISO TC 211, in CEN and in OGC. I'm personally attending most of those meetings. And from that information, we are going more into the implementation work. We have so-called NOSIN, Nordic Open Source Initiative. Then we are in ELF project. We have collaboration in Inspire Norden. Not sure how can I say MIC is implementation work, but related to that at least. And then we have our own national SDI platform called Oskari, which is doing all the view download services and metadata services. So our Finnish national SDI is based on this Oskari platform. And based on and from this experience, what we are getting from this implementation work, then we are going back to the standardization. So we have some feedback. Some of the things are maybe not that perfect, and that's why we have this standards tracker right now. So we can fill in our requests and ideas what should be done in the future, and that's really a lovely tool that not need to change emails all the time, but there is centralized repository for all the standards, for ISO, CEN and OGC all together. If I look a little bit into the details what we have in this Nordic collaboration, we have this Nordic standardization meeting twice per year, usually just before ISO TC211 plenary. So we had excuse me, ISO TC211 meeting 2 weeks ago in Berlin, and then we had 4 weeks ago meeting in Copenhagen related to Nordic standardization. We share information about participating countries, so what are our experiences in last half a year. Then we talk topic by topic, different standardization activities. And then we have information about usage of standards in Nordic countries. That's also valuable information that you know how other countries are actually exposing and using standards. And then we also always have some discussions in different hot topics, current topics. Well, I'm not sure if RDF and persistent identifiers are so hot topic, but we are seeing it very important. So this varies meeting by meeting. Then also this Nordic group, usually in TC211 meetings, just before plenary votes, we have our resolutions, and then we sit down together and think about how to make votes. So we are referred as a Nordic mafia sometimes. So we have 5 to 7 people in some corner. We have papers there and how to vote this one, how to vote that one. And then other countries are looking that, okay, Nordic mafia is active again. We have activities in metadata, as I said, to share, exchange information concerning different topics, to initiate different workshops, etc. So that hasn't been very active lately, but I think metadata is in quite good situation right now. Well, on the other hand, 115-1 just came out, so I think we have more meetings on this area as well. Then we have this implementation part, Nordic Open Source Initiative. So really from standards to practical implementations. Right now we have 4 different ongoing projects. One is related to open search. So for this Atom feed-based download services, in GeoNetwork there will be open search plugin on top of that. So we've been coordinating that work from Nordic countries. We are working on service validation for Inspire services. Then we are working with different authentication and authorization, Nordic authentication and authorization for SAML2 federations, XAML, GeoXAML. So security issues is one of the topics in our work right now. And then we are starting development of visualization editor. So to have SLD editor, visual Visivuk tool, web-based, where you can change the styles and then you can apply those. So it could be interesting for Mona Lisa project. However, as I said, naval charts are not the best one to start with, as it's quite complicated visualization. Then we have Inspire Nordic network. This is more about political things, I would say, policy things, more not that much related to technical work. And of course we have sessions and meetings together here in Inspire conference. So tomorrow at 2 o'clock there is How to Have Fun with Inspire Go Nordic session, where we have 3 different presentations, working together, learning together, same but different. And then we have this last one is really related to Nosin, knock knock, we are open. So I think that pretty much concludes my presentation. So what we are doing, I'll do what I promised. We work towards a common goal, positive attitude. It's positive to do different things and to be open. That's our main goals in our work. So that was all from my side at this point. Do you have any questions?
Thank you. You mentioned the standards tracker that I presented this morning at Inspire. I got some comments back making it look too easy. So what the standard tracker does is mainly receive the feedback and send it to the various working groups. Then it's up to the working groups to take care of it. So again, the OEC membership, it's not me or Tina doing anything with the requests.
Yeah, good point.
It's not exactly a question, hijacking. So with a different hat on, still feature Pathway, but not particularly on the survey. I find it a very interesting model because we're just trying to start in the UK and an open standards forum that sort of looks at issues across OGC and TC211 and W3C. That's really just a comment to any other UK people in the room who aren't already aware of that. Come and have a chat with. And we might look through your slides and nick some ideas like that last one about sort of values, how we should promise to work together.
Yeah. I think I have Nordic colleagues here. I think the work has been really valuable. We are really happy about that. Our bosses are sometimes thinking about, is it really worth of that? But you know, have a half-day meeting or one-day meeting twice per year where you really have face-to-face communication instead of these webinars. So it's really a good thing.
We're starting by trying to get, if you like, the bosses to agree what are the measures after 1 year to see whether it's worth it or not, so they don't define them.
Yeah, we are also reporting to our general directors, so they are getting report once a year about our activities, and then they will decide if we will continue or is it disbanded.
Good. Any more questions? Maybe for offline. Who is the godfather of the Nordic mafia? Okay, Olaf?
Well, it's not me.
No.
On the contrary, I think you just saw him up here. At least I wouldn't fight with him about that. Yeah, thanks. All right, Jari has very cleverly shown the Nordic cooperation, and I need to be a little bit more introvert here and talking about only our Norwegian experiences in the international standards. It will only be a small part of how we deal with international standards. Before I do that, I must say that our Director General is very much in favor of this Nordic collaboration and really supportive of that. You saw me earlier today here as the chair of ISO TC211, so a kind of a standards figure. But this is more my real work within Norway, really to make the implementation or make our work in the Norwegian Mapping Authority and in the Norwegian Spatial Data Infrastructure Norway Digital useful for our users. So most of my life or career has been in what I'm talking about now. I showed this earlier, so I will not go into that again, but we had an early start back in the 80s. And during the 90s, we had, much as you have seen in data specifications in Inspire, we had around 40 different themes covered as national standards. And based upon all this work that we started initially, we have now a technical framework document which is the background and sort of explanation of how the standards relates to each other and where you should use the different of them. I will firstly go a little bit into one of the main activities in the Norwegian spatial data infrastructure, which is data modeling and making product specifications. In doing this, we are building upon the set of standards, of course. The attitude in our field, as well as in any other field I know about standards today, is we should look at the global standards firstly. If we don't find a global standard for the topic we are interested in, then look at the European level. And if we don't find it there, okay, maybe we should develop it as a de jure national standard. And if you can't even find it there, then do it yourself. And thus we have also an authority from our, well, the ministry we have belonged to up to now, the Ministry of the Environment, which we have just changed ministry, to develop also what we call domain-specific standards, but still used by the whole country. So we are now reliant upon this more than 15 international standards in our work. The national standard has been developed into 3 parts, kind of generic concepts, and now we are back into 1980s, 1990s, then general feature catalogs, general types of information, and then finally product specifications. I'll skip this, more the fundamental things. A lot of standards are developed there. Here are the themes that we started with in Norway, these 40 plus I mentioned, that goes into the feature catalog. And then finally we are making product specifications. This is in Norwegian. Every agency in Norway, every public sector agency in Norway that has the responsibility for a theme or a data set has the obligation to develop a comprehensive product specification describing that in utmost details. And we have produced several guidance documents how to do this. When we are dealing with the specification and developing the product specifications, and there is an ISO standard governing, ISO 19131 data product specification, which is the background here. But there is a lot of documentation that goes into that, and only a very few people in Norway are able to do this work fully. So we have been using a lot of investment now in automizing the process, from all the free text into the data content structure, and then finally the encoding, using kind of, let's call it model development, model-based architecture here. So we look at the free text, which is part of the overview, scope, reference system, data quality, delivery things that is there. And then we have the UML application scheme, UML model, and the application schemas, feature catalogs, and then finally SULSI and GML realization. GML realization is the GML schema for that product. SULSI is this old, more proprietary Norwegian format which I spoke about this morning. Yeah, sorry. And you see all the standards that go into the different parts of these aspects. We are developing tools now to automize. So we have an old tool which we will replace, an MS Access tool, to produce the free text. So in the modeling phase, in our UML models, we are putting a lot of additional information that actually makes it possible for us to develop this more automized documentation in the end. And that applies especially to here. I cannot go into all the details here, but using enterprise architecture and introducing a lot more information that is necessary in that, then we are able to, in a final, to produce also a document, a text document that can go into a formal product specification. And the same applies to the encoding. We have made plugins, for instance, to the open source tool ShapeChange to produce these schemas automatically from the UML models. Of course, using the standards that govern how you go from a UML model to an application schema, like the annex in ISO 19136 GML document. So, our product specifications, comprehensive documentation, and we are not fully. We have made a few, some of these, but not the full range of covering all the aspects. But then they are based upon all these international standards. Here you see ISO 19107. It's also a European standard. So we get a front page from CEN, and then they get a front page from the Norwegian standards body. Standards Norway, but it's really the ISO 19107 that's at the bottom here. And we have also a procedure workflow in this, where product specification is the responsibility of the data or the theme owner. It goes through a quality check by us as the coordinator of the geospatial data infrastructure, and then it is published also by us in the Norwegian Mapping Authority. And it goes into several repositories. Into the GeoPortal, where you can access the whole document. The model part goes into the UML model repository. The schema, the application schema, GML schema, goes into a schema server. And this more proprietary I will not mention. And at the bottom they point to the real physical data set. And it's all through the GeoPortal that you will have access to all this in a way. Now I will go into another aspect that we have been investing a lot of effort to in the few last years. That's a geosynchronization. We have the challenge, for instance, that a lot of data is produced and maintained at the municipal level, but they are aggregated to the national level. For instance, our large-scale information in the 1 to 1,000, 1 to 5,000 level of detail. And this has been a complicated manual process to keep the national repository updated. So we have been investing into making a national standard for how to do geosynchronization. So we are providing now a subscriber provider architecture. We have a transaction log that you can subscribe to, and then the physical transactions are documented as WFS T transactional WFS. And this is in part work now, and I will show one example of how we use this. Take the transport network theme of Inspire. It's a complicated one in the sense that it involves data from several agencies: the national, the public roads administration, the rail authorities, the air traffic authorities, and the Norwegian coastal administration. So they have their own data sets with the national product specification, as I have been talking about. But of course we also need to satisfy harmonized content according to Inspire. So we have a transformation activity going up to an Inspire compliant set. But then we need to integrate all these different themes from different organizations into a transport network as a distribution database here. and then disseminate that as WFS or WMS or atom feeds or whatever, according to the implementing rules of INSPIRE. And here is the synchronization comes in again, gathering together these and keeping that distribution database fully updated. This is not fully operational at the moment, but this is a main topic that we are piloting for doing this work now. So this should ensure the best workflow that we can have from the national day-to-day maintained data assets and up to the users out here using the harmonized transport networks. And geosynchronization has become an essential part of that, building upon international standards. Since the 90s, we have developed a service-based infrastructure. I was lucky to be in Washington area in '99, where WMS was first shown publicly, and I went home and we called for a big meeting with a lot of different public agencies in Norway and said, we have to do this. This is simple, we can do it, and we have to do it together. And the idea was absorbed by so many of these different other agencies. So within a few years, we had this web up running, distributed services from a lot of different agencies, and this was the basis also of Norway Digital in the end. And today we of course have these model like that, and I will just finalize by saying that these are the standards that are underpinning this dissemination part of the national spatial data infrastructure. Of course, mostly the WMS services, WFS services are also coming more and more now, also with the European Location Framework project, and all are underpinned by GML, of course, but also WCS and to some extent WPS and SOS. Sensor observation services are coming into the spatial data infrastructure now. So it's totally reliant upon the international standardization bodies. Yeah, thank you.
So, I have a question. Sorry. In Norway, you have your national activities. Do you include also industry and municipalities, or do you usually work on ministerial?
The Norway Digital is infrastructure, especially for public sector, but all levels, the municipal level, the regional level, counties in Norway, and the government. And all public institutions now with any interest in geospatial information, in the sense they are either producing or consuming that, are a member of the Norway Digital. But also industry is heavily invited into different fora we have, especially the technology forum that we run, where we discuss all the challenges and all good new ideas. And so industry, the vendors, international vendors, domestic vendors, they are fully a part of this. Yes.
So thank you very much, everyone. If you have still questions, we are around. I think Olaf, Mikael, Jari are also here. Given the time, I finish this workshop. We will upload the presentations, and I will add some more slides about the document I mentioned at the beginning of the session, this Open Standards in Inspired Market report. And yeah, but I would highly encourage you get in touch with the speakers if you want to, if you have more if you need more information or want to dig a little bit deeper into what they were talking. Thank you very much, and have a good conference.